Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California. This is Success Sadhana. My name is Pavani, and I welcome you all to our program today, where we are going to discuss yoga of the tongue as part of our Superpower series with our host, Vesh, who is a veteran Bhakti yogi, an author, and a former monk. Welcome, Vesh, to Success Sadhana.
Thank you so much, Pavani. I'm ecstatic, happy to be back here because there's strength in numbers. And when we get together purposefully to discuss the purpose of life and how to move forward towards our highest potential in life, then we get inspired and there's a path to follow and we feel traction in life. So I always get reinvigorated when I come back here to be with everybody. And I deeply appreciate you taking your time in such a, with such busy lifestyles everyone has going on, right? Do you all feel a little busy sometimes?
Totally busy and crazy.
Manu shaking her head. Pavani says, busy and crazy. Go cool. Good to see you. Thank you very much, Mukharvind, for being here. Deva Prasanna, Rashi, Kavita. Okay. How do I pronounce? Okay. Zila? Zila. Zila. Hi, Zila. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
And somebody's name started with PH, but now it's gone, so I missed it. It looked like it's Greek with some PH or something. But thank you very much, everyone, for being here. So today, we'll talk about something that's really close to us all. And it's within our circle of influence, which is a good place to live. When recently, actually just an hour ago, I was speaking with a friend who was describing how his life had been out of control for some time, and that he realized that there is a way in which he could be exclusively dedicated to his circle of influence. That is, the places in his life where he knows that he can be effective. And when he became dedicated to that, I could see a marked change in him, and he feels in it himself that he's doing the things that make a difference and that he can do something about. Oftentimes, I dwell on those activities or events in life that I can't do anything about. They're beyond my circle of influence. And then I get swept away in a current of anxiety. Does that sound familiar? So coming back into that circle. And today's program will be just about that. And what do I mean by the closest? Something that's very close to us? I'm going to mention something that you're very intimately connected with, that makes a big difference to you in your life and every day of your life, every minute of your life. And it may be the most forgotten about part of your life right now. And until this very moment that I mentioned what it is, you may have forgotten it. Should I say what it is? I need a quorum. Everyone who's a voting member, this is a democracy. Okay, Pavani gave a thumbs up. Manish gave a thumbs up. Need a few more for a quorum.
I was going to tease and say you should build the suspense more.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm getting close to a quorum now. Thank you very much. And I will try to build a suspense. It's something that determines the direction of your life. You can change the direction of your life even today or in the next 10 seconds when you realize the power of this one entity you have in your life. It's a tool that's exclusively for you to use. Okay, I've got my quorum, and I thank you for the encouragement, and I tried to build more suspense. It's your tongue. Now, if you can think back to 10 seconds ago before I said that, were you thinking about your tongue? Were you considering your tongue to be the gateway to all the other senses? Were you thinking that the way to transform your life from this moment forward rests in the power of your tongue? Or were you thinking that my tongue and my speech that emanates because of the use of my tongue from my vocal cords and my tongue is one of my superpowers? Was anybody thinking any of those things right before I said it? I'll open the chat box because that's a place. We need a lot of chats today. I need a lot of chats today. Thanks, Anita. Thanks, Pavani. You weren't. Given the topic, you had a little heads up. So you were thinking that's what it was going to build towards. And we got a smile out of Go Cool. Thanks, Go Cool. A little more chatter out there. They used to tell us that in Little League Baseball. We need some chatter out there. Okay. So what about the tongue? Let's take a look in just a minute about the tongue and some of the ways we can think about it. But before we do, let's just do a little exercise in focusing, because oftentimes we sweep through the day and we forget where we are, who we are, and so forth. So if you will, just close your eyes for a moment. Just give it a rest from looking at the outside world and take a look inside. And I'm going to give you a little background tone. I'm switching on my original sound for musicians, and now I'm going to put on a tambura drone in the key of C. So that's very grounding, the key of C. And here it comes. Get ready. And now, as you settle in to an exploration of your inner environment, take the time to breathe and notice how your breath is sustaining you. And have some gratitude for the fact that you're able to breathe right now. Just feel total gratitude for your breath. Stay alert and bring your attention to your breath. And take a nice deep breath in, more than you were before, and let it out nice and slowly and relax as you exhale. And do that a couple more times. And just feel how every cell in your body is being nourished by the inhale, and how satisfied you feel just by breathing. And especially by noticing your breath and feeling grateful for the process of breathing. And now we're going to try a mantra. It's one syllable. It's pronounced Om. It's a seed mantra, and it contains a multitude of spiritual information and inspiration. In the key of C, I'll say the mantra 3 times. And behind muted mics, just follow along by saying the mantra, if you can. If you're in an office or something like that, you can just say it in your mind and listen. I'm going to exhale now. I'm going to inhale now. Now take a couple of breaths and just feel any of the effects of the vibration that you created with your own vocal cords or that you heard through the speakers coming into your mental system. And now we'll chant 5-syllable mantra, Nitai Go Ranga. I'll do it 3 times and you can follow with me if you wish. Nitai Go Ranga. Nitai Go Ranga. Nitai Go Ranga. And bring your awareness to the vibration that's passed through your mental system. And feel the breath of life. And just be aware that you're a conscious being. Be aware of your own consciousness. Look at it and notice, I'm aware. I'm awake. I'm aware that I'm aware. And now notice that you can point your attention anywhere you wish. That's your power. And where attention goes, energy flows. So to try this out, bring your attention to a beach and see the ocean waves coming up on shore. Now bring your attention to a forest and notice the trees. Now bring your attention to your hands and notice that you have hands. You're not your hands, but you have hands. And finally, bring your attention to your tongue. And be aware that you have a superpower. That is your speech, the use of syntax, mantra. You create your worlds by your speech. You can transform your consciousness by the sounds that you utter. Now rub your hands together, open your eyes, and come back into the Zoom room. Welcome back. And now I'm going to show a few slides dedicated to the yoga of the tongue. And some people sometimes think I mean that your tongue can do a twist or a downward dog, and that may be true, but this is something else. So, first of all, the human tongue is said in the Vedas. Veda means knowledge. So there's ancient books of wisdom, including the original Vedas written in Sanskrit thousands of years ago. And then there's what's called the Upanishads, which means wisdom for those who want to go beyond the bodily conception and understand their spiritual nature. Then there's a summary of that called the Vedanta Sutra. Then there are books like the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, which are called Puranas or Smriti, and they explain the meanings of the ancient Vedas in a very succinct or in a very understandable way. So in these Vedic literatures, wisdom literatures, I sometimes call them, it's described how there are many living beings, some of which we see on the left there, mostly birds, it looks like, who have tongues, but the human tongue is special. Coco, the gorilla, passed away a few years ago, had quite a few vocabulary words. And as scientists explained, when Coco would express, I can't remember if it was a he or she, so I don't want to insult Coco, but if anybody remembers, you can tell me in the chat. The syntax was an issue. So if Coco wanted a banana, Coco would say, want, banana, banana, banana. Coco didn't have the syntax to say, I would have taken a banana yesterday if you had brought them, but today, because of the quality of the bananas, I'm not so interested. There's a huge leap between the brain of Coco and that of a human who is able, the human being able to use syntax. It's very complex, and it takes a huge brain to be able to do that and to have an appreciation or to study grammar and so forth. And then, of course, there's mantra, which is one of the main topics of the Vedas. There's a special kind of sound package, a seed sound that you can utter that brings you into transformation, a state of transformation that is becoming more aware of the difference between yourself and the body and becoming aware of your nature as a conscious being, not just a mechanical or biomechanical robot that you're inhabiting. So look at all the species on the left. You can imagine their tongues, and generally birds have a specific song pattern. Most of the animals, they have a few cries. I mean, they are intelligent, and they're also spiritual beings inside those bodies, but the apparatus that they have to express various points is limited compared to a human. Okay. Now we look at the yoga wisdom from Srimad Bhagavatam. It's one of the wisdom literatures I mentioned. It makes this remarkable statement. If one can control the tongue, it's possible for one to control all the other senses. Isn't that amazing? So this is one of the statements that comes out of these ancient literatures. And I'll quote one of them in Sanskrit for authenticity. From the Padma Purana, there's a statement, Ata Shri Krishna Namadi Nabhaved Grayamindriye Sevamukhi Jivado Swayameva Spuratyada. What this says is that the jihva, or the tongue, is the beginning point for all yoga and all higher realization. Adao means the beginning. And where do we start our transformation in consciousness? How do we improve ourselves? We can use the tongue. So once we are able to discipline the tongue, mostly it refers to what we speak and what we eat. Those two areas. If you're deliberate about those, you'll notice that all the other senses and all the other aspects of your life begin to come into alignment with your purpose if you are very deliberate about your speech and about what you eat. Coco was a she. Thank you, Gopi. Died in June 2018. Okay. Thank you. Way to go, Coco. So, if you concentrate on controlling your tongue, you can change your life instantly by restraining the tongue and redirecting it to higher topics. So there's a instinct sometimes that, okay, the tongue, that's the next slide, Bhavani, that the tongue is, it can be troublesome, so I'll just stop talking. And sometimes people take a vow of what's called mauna. Mauna means I won't say anything, just stop talking. But what the wisdom literatures most recommend, if you don't have anything good to say, it's better not to say anything. My mom taught me that when I was a kid. She said, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all. Did anybody ever hear that? Let's try our democratic system and see any votes for that. Anybody's mom tell them that? Yes, Kavita. Thank you very much. Okay. Yes. So it's about transforming our speech or redirecting it to the next level. So as the next slide will show you, the tongue is a gateway sense. We talk about gateways. How do you enter? How do you enter the path? We talked about that. Yoga begins with the tongue. And sometimes we talk about ways in which we become degraded. We'll enter in a certain area, like people used to talk about gateway drugs, that thing, one thing leads to another, slippery slope. The next thing, you're consumed with some maintaining the ingestion of some kind of chemical one way or another. And how did you start? There was a gateway. So the tongue is the gateway sense to all the other senses. It simplifies it, doesn't it? Because if you have one place to focus your discipline and to use the tongue for a higher purpose, and you can take this wise advice that, yes, if I can do it here, then everything else will come into alignment. Then it's one-pointed. We have this clear way that we can improve ourselves. And I'll show the next slide and then take a few reflections before I go into some more practical matters. The rudder. So there's a way in which a boat has these various protrusions that guide it in a certain direction. If you look at your tongue, it looks like a rudder. And this is another metaphor to just remember the way you set your rudder is the way that you are going to go in your life. Because this is a preamble to the topic. There are several more slides that get more specific and more practical. That is, some things you can start in your daily practice. But I just wanted to hear from you anything I've said so far that stuck in your mind. That is, what one thing that you heard so far that you found useful. Shankari Kaur.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Please accept my most respectful humble obeisances. Today's talk reminded me of my father. When I was very young, we used to have a jackfruit tree across our house, and it had nest for both the cuckoo and the crow. And he would often say that when you look from your window, you cannot tell the difference between the cuckoo and the crow because they look so similar. But once they open their mouth, you will know who is a cuckoo and who is a crow. And then he always used to say that animals do not have this gift that we humans have. So always be very careful about the speech that you use. Do not take it for granted. And that thing has stuck with me even today. I mean, I guess I was just maybe 7 or 8 at that time, but it made such a deep impression in my soul that I still carry it. And now today you've put it so beautifully in the spiritual perspective. It just reminded me of you, Raj. Thank you so much.
What a great memory from your past and good direction. And it's remarkable how a little wisdom, advice can take us through our lives in a good direction. I really appreciated what your father said. It's also mentioned that a fool is not discovered until he or she opens their mouth, because somebody may be nicely dressed and appear to be civilized, and then when they speak, that's how you might discover that what their actual consciousness is. And I read a little statement a long time ago that I appreciated. It says, he had nothing to say, and then he said it. So there's a way in which our speech reveals our position. Okay, anybody else? Just a reflection, anything you heard that stuck from the preamble so far? Shankari Kaur, your hand is still up, just in case. You can either come off mute and tell us, or you can put something in the chat box. I need more chat today. I need more human interaction for my own sanity. Please help make me sane.
Yeah, that will be nice. Please feel free to chat.
That'll be nice if I stay sane, right?
No.
Yeah.
That would be nice to also hear from others. I was actually thinking just now, I had a meeting with a colleague, and it was a hard conversation. And because of my temper, I was not able to control my tongue. And what a topic to talk about. It was like, I didn't say anything bad to him, but at the same time, I was not my normal. So the person could sense that, something is not correct. So, and then I realized, oh, I could have just thought about something more higher and, let this one go. But it's the most hardest thing in this world to control the tongue, as you said. That's in the beginning of the series. How can you how do I help myself in that, especially when we have to deal with office and the day-to-day regular people? How do I just control myself?
I have a friend who worked in a governmental agency for many years. He worked in conflict resolution, and he used to tell me about his work a lot, and also his studies. In coming to the profession he was in, he had to study the science quite a bit. One of the little graphs he gave me that really helped me out a lot, and this is an answer to your question, is a graph, very simple graph that shows an inverse relationship between emotion and reason. When I'm emotional, as the line for emotion rises, my reasonability goes down. They cross in the middle. Inverse relationship. And developing a sense of awareness that, what is my state of emotion right now? Am I being carried away? So, for instance, what if you get an email and somebody insults you or something like that? It could even be very subtle, or they don't show enough respect, whatever my ego feels it is. And you might sense that your chest is becoming agitated, and maybe you're breathing harder. And there's this sense of, wow, who do they think they are? I mean, that thought might come through the mind, right? And then that's the time to realize that my emotion's going up, my sense of reason is going down. So don't type anything right now. And also don't make that phone call right now. Wait till you can control that sense of emotion that's carrying you away from reasonability. That's one of the rules that can really help, is to just take a pause. And it can happen even in a second. If you can have a quarter of an inch separation between when somebody says something to you and when you respond, that can save you. As we'll see in just a moment, that you can't take back your words once you say them. You can apologize for them, but you can't take them back. And they're actually indelible. Once you release your very powerful words, then people take them in and they realize, oh, that's what they were really thinking of me deep inside. So be careful. All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's see. There's some in the chat
Gopi.
box here too.
Yeah. Gopi has a question.
Please,
Gopi,
Gopi,
please
go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was at the temple yesterday. I led Kirtan the Thursday evening, and it felt beautiful and wonderful. One of my first experiences doing it. So thanks for that. My question, in Stoic philosophy, they say that if we can't control what happens to us, but we have one choice. We can choose how we respond to that situation, and that's in our control. So essentially, the crux of what you're saying is that if we know the dials by which we can control our emotional reaction, what comes out of our mind, we can live in a peak state. And you mentioned pausing just before you take action as one of the steps by which you do it. But what are your top 3 techniques to operate the dial where you control the responses?
One of them is, that was the question, right?
Yeah,
One of them is to start my day with
formula. What would it be like? Sorry.
Okay, sure. I'll go into that in a minute and more of the slides, but I'll just give a summary right now. And I find that when I start my day by doing mantra meditation, which engages the tongue, my tongue feels satisfied in repeating the mantra. And also there's a special power of the mantra that helps me to develop that little gap. And if I just jump into my day right away and I run out the door without any experience of the difference between myself and my body and a sense of feeling compassion for others, yeah, we're all going through things, I can be forgiving and so forth, then as I interact with people, it may be less enlightened than when I do take that time. A second, because you asked for 3, is that I have a list of people, mentors that I depend on, and they're from different walks of life, different ages, and different professions. But when I have a response to give to somebody, it's really important, and I have to think about it, then I consult my mentors first. And it's a technique taught to me by my teacher. He said, you should have learned, wise people to consult before you make big decisions. And one of the big decisions oftentimes is responding to people. Now that's, may not happen in the moment, but that means a little longer time to think about how to respond. And a third is an admonition that I learned many years ago, which has served me well, which is measure 9 times, cut once. To give yourself permission to measure 9 times, because how many times have I done it, something hasty, like just a project I'm working on, even cooking. You can't make shortcuts in cooking so much. You try to cook it faster, hotter, whatever. It doesn't come out the same as when you give it the time you're supposed to give it. And also when cutting, especially this metaphor, when cutting cloth, it's like, oh, I think that's it. No. Measure it 9 times before you cut, because once you cut the cloth, that's it. It's cut. You can't get it back, and the whole thing is ruined if you're off by an inch. So remembering that I have permission to measure it first, be measured in the way I respond to somebody, just giving myself that, keeping that idea in the front, better to be sure how I'm going to respond before I do it. So there's 3 for you. Okay, Pavani, what else is in the chat box?
Thank you, Gopi, for the wonderful question. And he gave you thumbs up.
Definitely, great.
And Mayank says, I feel optimistic to know tongue is the gateway sense, and through it, we can direct our life.
Yeah, optimism, it comes when we have a sense that we're directing our own lives. There's a sense of hopelessness when I feel that everything is being imposed upon me. And as Gopi pointed out from the Stoicists, there's a way in which things are going to happen to all of us. But when we develop that sense of, I have the power to control how I respond, and it does create an optimistic mindset, doesn't it, Mayank? And that's knowing that, okay, this is where it all starts from. It starts from the tongue. My advancement in consciousness, my relationships, it's all based on the tongue. Okay, go ahead, Pavani. What's the next one?
And Xiaomei says, words are more powerful weapon to harm people, or the most efficient way to send love.
That's such an important point to remember. There's a verse that comes in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, in which Krishna says that one's words can act like a spear and pierce the heart of another. And therefore, we have to be really careful what we say. And I like the way you put the positive in. It's the most efficient way to send love too. The words that we give to other people, we're very purposeful. And to that end, it's always helpful for me when I have the inspiration to appreciate somebody is to do it in the moment. So oftentimes there's a diminishment of intent. You might think, oh, that person's so meaningful to me. I really appreciate that person. Say it now. Write it down and send it before that passes and you get absorbed in something else. And then, a year later, that person says, well, you never really cared for me. We don't have any idea of the scale upon which our words are powerful in other people's lives sometimes. And if we take the time to appreciate somebody at the peak of our appreciation for them, that can make their whole life. If you've ever experienced this in your life, a third grade teacher came up to you and said, you're really special. I watched you, and the way you pay attention, or the way you just wrote that sentence, you have potential. That can that could take you all the way to the end of your life. That my third grade teacher, Mr. Weber, and I did have one like that, told me this, and that kept me going. And conversely, if somebody speaks something very demeaning or harsh, that it can also penetrate the heart and be very difficult. And that's not to say that constructive criticism is bad. I mean, there is a way in which when we get a well-intentioned criticism from somebody and saying, you could really improve in this area, that can also be helpful. So I'm not saying to be Pollyanna and just bypass any kind of correction. Okay, what else did we get, Pavani?
So Gokul says, tongue is also instrumental in staying silent and staying within.
Oh, what a nice point. It's one of the main points that people bring out in training others how to speak. It's one of the main points in comedy is pause. It's very underutilized. People oftentimes feel like I have to fill every gap with something. And so not speaking at some intervals or in some circumstances can, so to speak volumes.
Thank
And
you.
finally,
Rashi says, instinctive reaction is enslavement. Conscious response is freedom.
Rashi, where are you getting this stuff? That's gold. That's thing. Could you copy that? Actually, copy all these things, Pavani. We'll keep them in our archives.
We get the transcript because we are recording this, so we will get all this. Yeah.
Super. All right, now let's look at the next slide. I love this next slide because it shows how our words create our world. Our words create our world. If you keep this in mind and you can remember this picture, whatever we're saying is creating our environment. We have an environment and it's come from somewhere. It's emanating from the words that we speak. Of course, as we've discussed in other meetings, the kind of sound we allow to come into our environment is also creative. In other words, it inspires us to speak in a certain way because garbage in, garbage out. For certain, if you listen to the headline news, for instance, and then you sit down with a significant other, spouse, a friend, what are you going to talk about? Well, something just got blown up, or somebody said something derogatory towards someone else. That's what's in your mind. If you take in something that's more content rich and nourishing, and that's what's in your mind. For instance, if you make it a goal to read something every day that actually has some depth to it, that's poetical, that's touching, that is aesthetic, that's philosophically satisfying, when you sit down with a friend or a family member, what's going to come out? It's what you let in. And that will influence your whole household. Whatever environment you live in, whatever you speak when you sit down, oftentimes we get a chance to talk when we sit down to have to break bread together. And it's what comes out in that conversation. Oftentimes the conversations are so superficial. Go home for the holidays, hoping to make some deep connections and oh, what movie did you watch? Or something like that. It can go to very trivial points if that's what we're taking in. Okay, Gayatri said something. She said, this is such, oh, go ahead, Pamini.
Okay, so she says, this is such profound knowledge and a reminder that we need almost every day. Love your recommendation on grounding yourself using your tongue as a rudder to direct your day first thing in the morning. Although words are vital and irreversible, at times, isn't it important to understand the message emotion behind the words? Because at times, folks don't mean what they say. Curious to hear your thoughts.
Yes, that's a slide that's coming up, and that is, we'll visit in just a moment, which is sound carries consciousness. Have you ever had anybody say to you, I don't like your tone of voice?
A lot.
Yeah, a lot, huh?
And then I'm like, oh, just
Yeah.
like, wait a second and, understand what I'm trying to say that I can't articulate in words, or vice versa. So I'm very curious to dig
It's
into
powerful,
that.
right? It's
Yeah.
if you think about it for a minute, how did we know that? In other words, the human mind is so perceptive that
Mhm.
it's not just the syntax of what somebody said, it's the tone that they said it with. And we can pick that up over the phone. Sometimes I notice sound vibration is so informative that I can remember being on like conference calls where you can't see anybody, and someone just, maybe there's 10 people on, and then you just hear somebody start to speak. They only got out the first syllable of what they're about to say, and then either they got cut off or something, and then you knew who it was. And also you can tell when somebody says something that, oh, this is they're saying this, but their intention is perhaps different, either positively or negatively, right? So, we can't hide our consciousness so much, especially when it comes out in our voice. So that's why I was saying, there's a sense when I'm emotional, when I feel that I'm out of balance, I needed to be respected more, or whatever it may be. I don't have really good perspective at that moment. Don't say it, because I've noticed that even if you write it and you try to say that, it'll come out wrong. It gets expressed in a way that inflames the situation rather than brings it to a better place. And so that takes training. In fact, I noticed people that take training in how to speak to others. Like sometimes couples have communication problems, and there are experts that will say, here's some tools you can use. Like one of them is, there's a whole book written about nonviolent communication. And the way it works basically is that when you tell somebody how you felt about something they did, for instance, if it's something that negatively impacted you, and then you express it to them, you'd be very careful how you do it. And so you would say that, I know you didn't intend to do this, but when you slammed the door just now, here's how it made me feel. And the next time you come in, could you not do it so hard? The point that made it innocuous, that did inflame the situation, as you took out the intention. And if on the opposite side, I say something that, you're always trying to bother me by closing the door, I ascribe some intention on the person. How can I exactly know that? But if I'm careful the way I respond to circumstances like that, I take the guidelines, I can rise above the emotion of the situation. And as the author of Nonviolent Communication says, do you want to get what you want, or do you want to just say something that will inflame the situation? So your point's really well taken. There's a lot that goes that can be expanded from that. Thanks, Gayatri.
Thank you
Really
so much.
appreciate it. Okay, so let's go to a few more slides. And the next one is about how your word is your bond. This one is particularly meaningful. And if you think about it carefully, the ways that when you say something, you actually are creative. What to speak of making a bond with someone. For instance, why are marriage vows so important? And you actually have to agree. You have to say, I do. And in most states, if somebody's marrying you, that person has to say, now you're married. By the power vested in me by the state of California, I say that you're married. So that person makes a statement, and then it goes on the marriage license that somebody said it and that there was a witness and so forth. What about, oftentimes I sit in the emergency row, especially in United. Nobody take my seat, it's 21A, because it's got more leg room. And so, I sit in that seat, and every time they come over and they'll say, okay, if there's an emergency, do you agree to help out, to open the emergency door? And they look at you and they say, are you capable? Are you going to do it? And they say, you have to give a verbal yes. You actually have to say it out loud. You can't just nod your head. You have to say yes. And you don't get paid for that. So think of a judge. A judge is sitting behind the bench, and she's, about to pronounce a sentence. So she says, you're free to go. Hey, you get to walk out now. Or you must spend a week in jail. Immediately, the bailiffs will come over, handcuff you, and take you off to jail. Why? Because she said it. She was authorized. At that point, she had been vetted. She had gone through law school, everything there. And now it's her words that bind us or free us. Saying, I'm going to help you. This is something I learned a long time ago from a colleague. People oftentimes, if they come to us for, like I have a specific problem in my life, they say, don't worry, I'll help you. You're on the hook for the rest of your life to help that person just by your utterance. So you have to measure your words, be careful, because your word is your bond. Once you say it, like think of what a bond is. You put glue down somewhere, especially if it's super glue, and you're stuck. That word came out. So be careful what you agree to. Okay. Next one is something I mentioned before, and I think it's worth mentioning again, because this is one of the ways, as per Gopi's observation and question, is like, how can you create more space between your reaction to what happens and what you say? And one is to remember, once you say it and it's sent, you can only be forgiven, not forgotten. You have that power in your speech to heal or to encourage or to damage somebody's heart or consciousness. And it's not forgotten once you say it. So remember, you have that power. Do you really want to unleash something right now when you're emotional or when you don't have all the information, and let it out into the world? What to speak of aiming at somebody? So remember, you can't take it back. We might think about it when we're typing something. In the old days, kids, there used to be letters. There used to be letters, and we'd have to actually sit down by hand. This is like, all letters were written by hand when I was growing up. You'd have to write it out, get an envelope, put it in the envelope, the letter, and then you have to address it by hand, the whole thing. And oftentimes there was a gap then long enough for you to reconsider sending it. Or, if it was something that was perhaps emotional. And so, next day comes and you're like, I don't think I'll send it. But nowadays, you just push a button, 3 seconds, it's already delivered. And have you ever had that situation where you send it and it's like, oh no, where's the unsend button? I want to take it back. I mean, there is one nowadays, but it doesn't last very long. It's like 20 seconds, and then it's like, uh-oh, that's over. It's done. So it's like that with our words too. And I love this quote Words are free. It's how you use them that makes them valuable or not. You can say any old darn thing at any time. But consider, why am I saying it? Does it pass the test that they're useful, helpful, truthful? There's a guideline given in the Bhagavad Gita about your speech should be truthful, pleasing, not harmful to others. Again, it doesn't preclude constructive criticism given in a proper way at the proper time. So coming to a more philosophical level, the ancient wisdom literatures, including the Bible, there's a sense in the beginning was the word. The word was logos. Logos means the organization in the universe came about by an intelligent thought expressed through a word, creates. And then similarly in our lives, if you want to build something, say you want to put one of those tubs where you can sit in ice water every morning. Does anybody want one of those? Pavani, you don't want that? It's in vogue right now to sit in freezing cold water every day at a certain temperature, because apparently it helps to boost your immune system and so forth. Wisam, you're not going to get one of those? Okay. So, but what if you did? You wanted one in your backyard. So then what would you do? You'd look it up and then either make a call or you tell somebody, I want this. And by speaking about it, then the ingredients start to come into play. You just like, you realize, everything is on the planet. It's already there in the universe to make whatever I want available, my ice tub. And it becomes manifested by the words that you speak. So if you expand that onto a universal level, this is the idea in the Vedas. Everything, every form, shape you see, according to the idea of logos, that everything's organized, just like all the science are called ologies, because there's some organized system to follow, because there was an intelligent thought came out in the sound vibration and it created everything that we see that follows a particular order. Everyone okay so far? So far, it's almost over. Okay. Next one is, what you say will either bind or entangle you or liberate and enlighten you. So this is called anavriti shabdat. So shabdat means sound. You see that on the second line there. And anavriti means to become uncovered. This is the last mantra that's written in the Vedanta Sutra, which I mentioned earlier, one of the ancient wisdom literatures, which gives a summary of all the Upanishads. So it says, liberation by sound. The material manifestation, as we just discussed, began from sound, and sound can end one's material entanglement. How powerful is our voice? We can liberate ourselves by the way we use our voice. So next is how words are seeds we plant in our hearts and minds. What kind of garden are you planting? Remember, every word you speak is a seed. It's going to grow somewhere. And what we say to ourselves, what we hear ourselves saying to others, that's the seed that's going to grow. So now we come to mantra. Mantra is a sacred word or phrase that brings transformation. So this is a different category of sound, and it goes to this ontological understanding that there are various energies that we're dealing with here in the world. As an example, if we look at any one of us, like pick any square here, and you can see any of the personalities who are here today, every one of us has a combination of matter and spirit. Now, the consciousness is a different energy than matter. A dead stone doesn't talk, it doesn't have volition, it doesn't have free will. But we do. But who are we? The Vedas say we're beyond the body. The body is made of gross and subtle material elements, but we as consciousness are antimatter, completely different, categorically different energy. And there are mantras that hold the vibration of consciousness, or that come from a higher realm, what's called the fourth dimension. It's beyond the dimensions of this world. And when you repeat the mantra, it connects you to that realm that's beyond the lower energies that we're part of, actually, we as conscious living beings. So for instance, when we use ultrasound, you're able to see what's inside the body. When you use a stethoscope, the doctor is listening to the harmonics of the heart or other organs and can discern so many bits of information by that. And sonar, you can't see in the ocean. It's very difficult to see what's down there, but when you use sound vibration, you can discern the geography of the ocean. And similarly, when you use mantra, you can understand your higher self, who you are beyond the body. It just, like, ultrasound is quite magical, really. It's technology, but it's amazing. So is mantra. And it also brings transformation, because the sound vibration itself lifts the veil of the false ego and allows us to have a higher perspective of ourselves and of others. There are many benefits from chanting mantra. So the next one is something I already covered. So I'll skip over this one. Sound carries consciousness. And then the concept is you are what you speak. So be aware. Be very conscious of what you're speaking. And the next one says village talk. This is called in Sanskrit prajalpa. Like just gossiping, carrying on mundane conversations. They don't really pass the test. Is it important? Is it truthful? Is it helpful? And so forth. And you just say it anyway and pass it on for the sake of stimulating your desire to say something and hear others say something. And it's not consequential or helpful, I should say. This is called village talk. And it leads to weakness of heart. When you hear too much of this, it reduces your ability to appreciate others. It reduces your ability to see beyond just the body, or to even have a sense of happiness in life. It disturbs the mind, does village talk. So that's something that can be avoided. Symptoms of a high-minded person who's practicing restraint of the tongue. Some of the benefits that come are steadiness. Steadiness is rare because although we may make a vow, I'm going to do this, to be able to continue it even when there are major changes in life is very rare. Most people change course, or you see them a year later. Are you still doing that thing? No, I gave that up. I gave that up 2 days after I said I was going to do it. So steadiness and practice, you get that from controlling the tongue. And also, one of the other symptoms of a high-minded person, you can judge. And this is practically the whole topic of today. What does he or she say? Try to ascertain what is in that person's consciousness by what they say. And you can similarly look at your own speech and discern, how am I doing? And then this idea about subtle to gross. Everything manifests in our life from subtle to gross. So we see on the far left there a diagram that I don't have time to go into right now, but it talks about how our desires manifest through speech. They rise through the different chakras or the energy centers in our body until they come to the vocal cord center, and then we express them. And our thoughts come into words, so they become grossified. Thoughts are very subtle, but they become grosser when they're in words. That leads to actions. Actions lead to habits. Habits lead to our character. And that's what discerns where we're going. We're the architects of our own future. And it all starts with how we manifest our words. And now we have 0 time left for any comments. So does anybody want to make a comment in 0 seconds or less?
Amazing. Let's see. Oh, okay. Thank you, Mukar. Thank you, Manish.
Look, Linda's here, and she left such a nice comment. I think that's the thing that'll sustain me throughout my day. Thanks, Linda. Good to see you here. And thanks, everybody. What a exciting session for me to be with all of you today. I'm going away with so much more than I came in with. Your comments were brilliant, and observations and realizations. Pavani, how do you feel?
Lovely. I'm so happy I could come in today and be of some help to you. And the audience is wonderful. And one last comment I want to also read from Gayatri. She says, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So she quoted from Maya Angelou. Thank you, Gayatri. Wonderful having your ideas and questions today. And thanks everyone who asked wonderful questions and participated. Really wonderful. Thank you, Vesh, for being there. I just want to make a quick announcement. We also want to share with you that we run a community, which is called Bhakti Community. And if you go at bhakticommunity.com, you can get a little bit information. We have programs where Vesh also comes, mostly Mondays and Thursdays in the evening, 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. So if you are interested to join those programs, just put your name here on the website and give the referred by, you can put my name or any other corporate friend that you have who brings you to these programs, put their names, and we will be happy to share some information about upcoming classes with you or upcoming, it's a very good forum to make spiritual friendships and get to know more like-minded people.
It's a lot of fun. I do show up whenever I'm in town and sometimes when I'm out of town, and I can say that it makes my week on Mondays and Thursdays. I just want to confirm that on my way home from India this time, I did get a chance to go into one of the caves. They're called Gufa cave. One of them was way underneath the earth. You always think of them on the side of a mountain, but one of them I had to go downstairs actually into this cave. And a yogi had lived there for many years. So I confirmed from some of the curators of that cave, because it's an exhibit now, that these yogis, they come out of their caves at intervals to find fruits and roots, get a little fresh air. And when they see their fellow yogis high on the mountain peaks in the Himalayas, they have a custom which to encourage one another with this phrase, Hari Bol, which means keep the transcendental vibration going. And they've developed a system where they raise their hands as high as they can in the air and they call out to one another, Hari Bol. Shall we try it? Haribol.
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 Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
See you
Thanks,
soon.
everyone.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.